that will uphold labor rights in this country? Hillary. Yeah. That will uphold environmental protections in this country? Yeah. Who will keep dark money out of politics? That's who we need. Above all, we have to elect Hillary to make sure we win this Supreme Court. Who's going to appoint Supreme Court justices who will prevent large corporations from not allowing you to sue them when they do something bad to you? Hillary! We have so much riding on this election because of that Supreme Court, the next generation of decisions that will come down that will affect each and every one of us. And who is it that we want deciding who goes on that court? Hillary! Who are we for president? Hillary! Well, I am too. Thanks very much, everybody.
Hello, everyone. First of all, let me say thank you for being here for Hillary Clinton. Give yourselves a round of applause. Now, I'm going to give you a really good gift. I'm only going to be up here for 2 minutes, so let me go through a few things. First of all, I have a question. Just like Congressman Cartwright had a question, I just have one. Here it is, and I know you're thinking about this. You might not be ready for the question, but here it is. Are you ready to win for Hillary Clinton? All right. I was backstage, and we were able to spend a couple of minutes with Hillary Clinton and with Vice President Joe Biden. Thank him for being here. We are so happy he's with us again in Scranton to campaign for Hillary and to help us win. And when you think of Joe Biden, we not only think of his great service in the United States Senate and his roots here in Scranton, but we also think about the work he's done. Whether it's the work to protect women from abuse, to the work he's done on cancer research, keeping our country safe, and fighting for jobs. So on so many issues, Joe Biden has worked with us, and we're so happy he's here with us today to help us elect Hillary Clinton, the next president of the United States of America. Now, we could talk about a lot of issues. Let me just go through one issue, jobs. Hillary is the only candidate in this race that has a real jobs program that's based upon what we see all around us. A jobs program that understands, and she understands, that we're stronger together than we are when we're divided. Let the other side divide. We're going to unite and be stronger together to create jobs. Let me go through it. You know what it is. Infrastructure investment. Her plan will invest more in infrastructure than at any time in our history since the 1950s when we built highways across the country. That's going to help Pennsylvania. How about 1.7 million Pennsylvanians connected to high-speed, affordable broadband? That's what Hillary's plan does. Second, on manufacturing, she's going to invest in Pennsylvania manufacturing and make sure we crack down on trade abuses by other countries to give us a level playing field. She's going to cut taxes and cut red tape for small businesses so they can create jobs. Let me just conclude with one thought. These aren't my numbers or my analysis. This is Moody's Analytics, one of the toughest judges of any economic plan that you can think of. Here's what they said about the other candidates' plan. And I'm quoting from Moody's Analytics from just a few weeks ago. Quote, under the Trump plan, quote, the U.S. economy will weaken significantly if Mr. Trump's economic policies are fully implemented as he has proposed. The economy will suffer a recession that begins in early 2018 and extends into 2020. Do we want that plan? No. Here's what that same analytics firm, one of the best in the country, said about Hillary Clinton's plan. I'll just read you one sentence. Quote, during her presidency, That sounds good. During her presidency, the economy will create 10.4 million jobs, 3.2 million more than under current law, and in 2020, the unemployment rate would be 4.4%. You know what that means? You know what that means? That means that Pennsylvania could benefit, according to those national numbers, by as many as 414,000 new jobs here in Pennsylvania. We want to create jobs. We need to elect Hillary Clinton, the next president of the United States. Thank you.
Make an explosion. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton.
Come on up for the rise. Come on up, lay your hands in mine. Come on up for the rise. Come on up for the rise tonight. La 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 spirits above and behind me, faces gone black eyes, burning bright. May the precious blood find me, for as I stand before your fiery light. I see Mary in the garden.
Wow. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you all so much. It is so great to be back in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I can't tell you how important this is to me and to Vice President Biden. We both have a lot of memories of Scranton and Lake Winona, that's right. And it is such a nostalgic trip for me because my brothers are here. We came to Lake Winona every summer of my life and loved every minute of it. And there are a lot of people in this crowd who our family has known or Joe's family has known over the years, and we are grateful to each and every one of you. It's also wonderful to be here in Scranton with Senator Bob Casey. And your Congressman, Matt Cartwright. And your amazing Lackawanna County Recorder of Deeds, Evie Rafalco McNulty. And we sure miss that husband of yours. We're thinking about you and sending you our best wishes. We're also here with Auditor General Eugene Del Pasquale, too. And of course, as I said, I'm here with the one, the only, Vice President Joe Biden. You know, Joe grew up over on North Washington Avenue. No matter how far he travels, he never forgets where he's from. I have seen him in a lot of settings, in the spotlight as vice president and senator, in quiet moments with constituents, and in the Situation Room, helping to make decisions that affect our lives and security. And wherever he goes, he's always the same guy, a fighter for everyone who needs a champion, for towns like Scranton, and above all, a fighter for families. think he'd be the first to say that he cares about your families because of his family. Joe Sr. and Catherine taught Joe that all people deserve to be treated with dignity. When you see someone fall, you help them back up because we are all in this together. That is the Biden way. We have seen how he fights for working families because he passionately believes in the basic bargain that makes America great, that our economy should work for everyone, not just those at the top. And he stands up against injustice. He has led the fight to end violence against women and girls. And he stands up for people's lives and health, including the project he's now leading on behalf of President Obama, the Cancer Moonshot, to fund breakthroughs and save lives. As many of you know, his wonderful son, Beau, a great father, a great public servant, a great human being, passed away last year. So this is personal to Joe Biden. He knows it's personal to a lot of families. That's why he's fighting so hard to make a difference. And if I'm elected this fall, I'm going to ask Joe to continue the important work he's begun to help us fight and defeat cancer. So as someone who's worked with Joe for years, first in the Senate, then as a member of the Obama-Biden cabinet, I can attest that passion for standing up for people, trying to make lives better. It's what pushes him to work as hard as he can every second of every day for all of us. And Joe and his wonderful wife, Jill, have raised their children and grandchildren with those same values. So, Joe, I hope you know how much, not just Scranton, but America loves you and your family. So it means a great deal to have him by my side. You know, when Joe and I were deciding where to have our first campaign rally, there really was only one answer. Scranton isn't just Joe's hometown, it's my dad's hometown too. While the Bidens were on North Washington Avenue, my family, the Rodhams, were a few blocks away on Diamond Avenue. I was christened at the Methodist Church on Court Street. My grandfather went to work at the Scranton Lace Mill starting as a teenager. It wasn't easy work, but you know what I learned? That business treated its workers right, believe it or not. The Scranton Lace Company, all those years ago, actually offered a profit-sharing plan and health benefits at the beginning of the 20th century. They understood something that a lot of folks have forgotten. They understood that their workers were responsible for much of the business's success, so it was only fair that they shared in that success and that their families benefited too. And because of that job, my grandfather could give my father a better life. My father was able to go to college, went to Penn State where he played football. Then, after he got out of Penn State, it was 1935, right in the depths of the Depression, and he was looking for a job. He heard a friend of his knew somebody who heard that somebody was hiring in Chicago, so he literally hopped a freight train from Scranton to Chicago. I don't recommend that anymore. Where he got a job as a salesman. He went into the Navy during World War II, and when he got out, he started a small business in Chicago, where I grew up. And just like his father before him, my dad was determined to give us even greater opportunities than he had. And to me, that is the American dream. No matter where life takes me, I always remember I am the granddaughter of a factory worker and the daughter of a small business owner, and I am so proud of it. And you know, the story of the Rodhams and the Bidens isn't unique. What's unique is the country where those stories were written. No matter what Donald Trump says, America is great, and the American dream is big enough for everyone to share in its promise. But that doesn't mean we can take it for granted and just wait till it happens to us. We have a lot of work to do. Here in Scranton, you know that. President Obama and Vice President Biden pulled us back from the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression and put our economy back on a stronger footing. I personally don't think they get enough credit for that. Under their leadership, we've created 15 million new private sector jobs. 20 million people now have health care, and the auto industry just had its best year ever. So I think the job of the next president is to build on that, but to take on the deeper challenges that emerged long before the crisis and have persisted through our recovery. Inequality is too high. Wages are too low. It is still too hard for too many to get ahead. So my top priority is creating an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top, which is why I've set 5 ambitious goals to get us there. First, we're going to make the biggest investment in new, good-paying jobs since World War II. Second, we're going to make college debt-free for all and help millions of people struggling with existing student debt. Third, we're going to crack down on companies that ship jobs and profits overseas. And we're going to reward companies that share profits with their employees like the Scranton Lace Company did almost a century ago. Fourth, thank you. Fourth, we're going to make sure that Wall Street corporations and the super rich finally pay their fair share of taxes. And fifth, we're going to respond to the way American families actually live and work today by making child care affordable, because in today's economy, there is often no parent or grandparent staying home with the kids. And we're going to fight for paid family leave, because sometimes you need to take care of your child or your spouse or sick parent, and you should not lose your job for taking care of the loved one. Now, you know, whenever I mention these issues, you know, Donald Trump always said that I'm playing the woman's card. Well, you know what I say, if playing the woman's card is deal me in. I really believe that together this plan will go a long way toward building a stronger, fairer economy where everyone can contribute to its growth, everyone can share in its rewards. Now, by contrast, what's Trump's plan? Well, he laid it out last week. And I'll admit, even before he did, I didn't think it was going to be good for working Americans. But it turned out to be worse than I ever imagined. I know some of you may have friends up here in northeastern Pennsylvania who are thinking about voting for Trump. You know, I know. Friends should not let friends vote for Trump. just in case you're going to have a conversation, explain that Donald Trump would give trillions, that's trillions with a T, in tax cuts to big corporations, millionaires, and Wall Street money managers. That would explode the national debt. And it would lead to massive cuts in things like education and health care. He's even called for a new tax loophole. Let's call it the Trump loophole, because it would allow Trump to pay less than half the current tax rate on income from many of his companies, a pretty sweet deal. He would end up paying a rate lower than millions of middle-class families. Now, that is assuming he pays any taxes at all, because we really don't know since we haven't seen his tax returns. But we do know, just by looking at the data, we know that for the 400 richest taxpayers in America would get an average tax cut of more than $15 million a year from the Trump loophole. And then, of course, there's the estate tax that Trump wants to eliminate altogether. Now, if you believe that he's as wealthy as he claims, that would save the Trump family $4 billion. But it would do nothing for 99.8% of all the other Americans in our country. So, yeah, $4 billion tax cut for Trump, 99.8% of Americans get nothing. Think of what we could do with those $4 billion. We could pay for more than 47,000 veterans to get a 4-year college degree. We could provide a year's worth of health care to nearly 3 million kids. Or we could fund a year's worth of federal assistance to state and local law enforcement. So there are a lot of better ways to spend the money. And there's one more part of Trump's plan I want to mention. He's now saying he wants to help people pay for child care by excluding those payments from taxation. Well, again, guess who that will help the most? It will help rich people who will get 30 or 40 cents on the dollar to pay for their nannies. Hardworking families who can't afford child care in the first place will get little to no real help. That's why his child care plan has been panned by experts across the political spectrum, left, right, and center. Because remember, right now, child care costs as much as in-state college tuition in most of the country. So we need real solutions that will work for working people, not just the well-off. And to prove that he really cares about this issue, Trump made a point of talking about how his businesses offer on-site child care to workers. Well, that kind of perked me up. Because if he really did that, it would be a big deal. I wish more companies would provide on-site child care. That would be a huge benefit for employees, but like so much of what he says, it's not true. It turns out some of his resorts, hotels, and clubs offer child care services, but for guests, not employees. Just saying. If you stay at a Trump hotel, you can enroll your kid in something called Trump Kids. They will get special children's room service, children's spa services, even a nanny for a fee. But if you work for his business, if you clean the rooms, water the lawns, carry people's bags, you get nothing. I'm not even sure Trump knows that providing a Trump Kids program for paying customers is not the same thing as providing real child care for your workers. Just like his tax breaks for billionaires aren't the same as a real plan to help America's working families. You know, Vice President Biden has a saying I love: don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value. So it's pretty clear Donald Trump wants to give trillions of tax breaks to people like himself. not invest in our veterans, our kids, our police officers, our teachers, and anyone who really provides services. And we face real serious challenges in America. We need serious leadership. This is not a reality TV show. It's as real as it gets. Look at what's happening in Milwaukee right now. We've got urgent work to do to rebuild trust between police and communities and get back to the fundamental principle: everyone should have respect for the law and be respected by the law. So on all these important challenges, you have to ask yourself, is Trump up to the job? He's giving a speech. He's giving a speech about ISIS today. Now, I've laid out my strategy for defeating ISIS over many months. We will strike their sanctuaries from the air and support local forces taking them out on the ground. Under President Obama and Vice President Biden, we are making progress. We will surge our intelligence so we detect and prevent attacks before they happen. We will disrupt their efforts online to reach and radicalize young people in our country. It won't be easy or quick, but make no mistake, we will prevail. There is no doubt in my mind. And once again, in comparison, Donald's been all over the place on ISIS. He talked about letting Syria become a free zone for ISIS, a major country in the Middle East that could launch attacks against us and others. He's talked about sending ground troops, American ground troops. Well, that is off the table as far as I am concerned. So we'll wait and see what he says today. But, you know, sometimes he says he won't tell anyone what he'll do because he wants to keep his plan, quote, secret. And then it turns out the secret is he has no plan. And that was very clear when he said, I know more about ISIS than the generals. No, Donald, you don't. And on top of that, he says more countries should have nuclear weapons, including in the Middle East. He talks about walking away from our European allies. He has the temerity to say that the United States military is a disaster. Well, I wish he'd spent as much time as Joe and I have meeting the brave young men and women who serve in the military, meeting their families, meeting with Gold Star families. Those are not the words of someone who respects our military and the sacrifice that our young men and women make every single day. Look, I said in Philadelphia that a man you can bait with a tweet is not a man you can trust with nuclear weapons. It's also not a man you can trust to run our economy, help heal our cities, or be a role model for our children. There is no doubt Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit and totally unqualified to be President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief. So, my friends, America deserves a president who can get the job done, bring our country together, not tear it apart, deliver real results for hard-working Americans. And we can't win this election without you. That's why I'm asking you to join right now. Take out your phone and text JOIN, J-O-I-N, to 47246, or go to HillaryClinton.com. We are hiring organizers right here in Pennsylvania and across the country. We are going to run a vigorous campaign across Pennsylvania. We're going to keep building the future that you and your families deserve. And I am so sure we can do this, especially with this man fighting alongside us, just like he always has. So, Scranton, please, let's give it up for the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden.
folks, it's good to be home. Folks, let me tell you what Scranton does deserve. Well, thank you. Scranton deserves what it's always deserved because it is made up of so many people with grit and courage. I mean this sincerely, from the bottom of my heart. With grit, courage, determination, who never, never, ever give up. They deserve someone who not only understands them, they deserve someone who's with them, and they deserve someone who's made of the same stuff. That's Hillary Clinton. That's who she is. It's good to be home with so many friends as I look around. Matter of fact, one of the people on the reception line said, my aunt owns your house. Tell her I'm coming. I'm coming home. I was there when I was running, and up in the bedroom, written on the wall still is, Joe Biden slept here. And then it said, lived here. I'm glad they added the lived here part. You know, I'm often asked why we moved from Greenridge to Claymont, Delaware, and then Wilmington. Claymont's a suburb of Wilmington, Delaware. And it's because of Bob Casey. The Caseys lived 5 blocks from us, just around the corner from St. Clair's. And I am midway between Bobby's dad and Bobby. And I knew only one of us were going to make it out of Greenridge, and knew it wasn't going to be me. So I had to move. There was too much Casey talent in the neighborhood. Bobby, you're a great friend and a great, great United States Senator. Thank you. As they say in Southern Delaware, they talk at you like this. Matt Cartwright, that boy, he married up. He married right up to the Munleys. I tell you, I don't know, always seeking influence, but you got it, man. Matt, you're doing a wonderful job as well and become a very dear friend of mine. Thank you. I've been home since this time, but I stood here 8 years ago kicking off our campaign with Hillary and Bill Clinton at my side, having my back. It was just me up here who came to show their support. And I want to make it clear that as Scranton has always had my back, we, in fact, all of us, are going to have your back, Hillary. Scranton has been so... Some of the folks in our administration were there on election night when the results were coming in. I give you my word, as a Biden, I asked one and only one question. What did we do in the Northeast? And we won by a larger margin than we had any time before, and the rest didn't matter. I took full credit for it. Nothing to do with it. You know, if you listen to Barack, you'd think I was a kid who just climbed out of a coal mine with a lunchbox from Scranton. I'm the kid from Scranton. Well, I am from Scranton, and I was a kid at one time. But it's so often, quite frankly, my people in Delaware resent it. I've represented them for 36 years as a U.S. Senator and 44 years in high public office. And I swear to God, Hillary, there's a parade that started on the 4th of July about just as I was getting started in '72. And it was called the Hockessin Parade. It's right on the Pennsylvania border. And from the time my boys were then 3 and 4 years old, 4 and 5 years old at the time, actually 3 and 4 years old, they were in the parade with me. And so when my beau became, and he was, the most popular politician in Delaware, I would tag along with him. No, for real, in the parade. So one of the things I'm trying to do, Hillary, after the people of Delaware being so generous to me all these years, and to Bo as Attorney General, I'm trying to go back and do as many things in the last year at home in Delaware to show my affection and my appreciation. And so I was in the 4th of July parade in Hockessin recently, surprising the press and everyone because I was there. And there were thousands of people there. Many of the same people who waited 5 hours in line to pay respects at my son's viewing. And I was there to thank them for the overwhelming support they gave me for all those years. And as I continued along the parade route, two guys came running up to me, big guys, both guys I had played ball with, bigger than me. Secret Service was about to have a heart attack. And they said, "Joe, what in the hell's all this stuff about Scranton? You're from Claymont, God darn it. You're from Claymont. And you're from Delaware still, aren't you, Joe?" So y'all have to write a note, tell them I love Scranton, it's my home. But you know what? Home is where your character is stamped, where it's stamped into your soul, where your values are set, where your view of the world and your place in that world begin. For me, that was 2446 North Washington Avenue, around my grandfather Finnegan's table, as where I learned that money doesn't determine your net worth. That no one, I mean this sincerely. This is not hyperbole. This is deadly earnest. I learned that no one is more worthy than you, and everyone is your equal. I learned from my mother, Catherine Eugenia Finnegan Biden, that, and she said this so many times, she'd look you in the eye and say, "Joey, look at me. Remember, you're defined by your courage, and you're redeemed by your loyalty." She'd go on to say, because everybody's had tough times, she said, as long as you're alive, you have an obligation to strive, and you're not dead until you've seen the face of God. What I learned here from my father is that I could be anything I wanted to be, that anything could be accomplished. This is not a joke. This is real. That the measure of your character is not whether you get knocked down, you fall, because you will. The measure is how quickly you get up. I learned about resilience from my father, who, like many of you and many of your parents, made what I call the longest walk. The longest walk any man or woman can make is up a short flight of stairs to their child's bedroom to say, "Honey, I'm sorry. We can't live here anymore. We lost the house. Or Daddy or Mommy doesn't have a job." I remember my dad making that walk, moving us to my grandfather's home. I remember, what I remember most was him saying, "But I promise you, everything is going to, you can't go back to St. Paul's. You can't play in Greenwich Little League anymore. But I promise you, everything is going to be okay." And he meant it. He knew it. Because there used to be a basic bargain back then. There used to be a bargain if you work like hell for the outfit you work with, and they did well, you got to participate. That was the bargain. And what Hillary's all about is making sure that every one of you can look your child and your grandchild in the eye and say, "Honey, I mean this sincerely. Everything's going to be okay." Think how many people you know who don't feel like they can say that right now. My father, when he said it, on the balls of his heels, he meant it because he thought that there's just a clear shot if you worked hard. Everything I learned at my father and grandfather's table was reinforced by my neighbors and my friends all around this town. Pride, independence, resiliency. When I moved away from Scranton, I was going into 4th grade, but I never left. I spent summers, holidays, college weekends, weddings, funerals, first communions, bat mitzvahs. And by the way, for me it was Naog Park, it wasn't the lake. I always remember, but I've been taught what you all believe up here. Everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter who they are. That America, and Hillary gets this better than anybody I know, that America can be defined in one single word: possibilities. That's the thing about America. That's the thing about Scranton. That's the thing about who we are. Anything is possible. That's the America I know. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the America Hillary Clinton knows. You know the people I trust most in public life? I've been doing this a long time. I trust the people where the feeling starts in their gut, moves to their heart, and then is articulated by a great mind. Hillary understands the hopes and aspirations of the people in Claymont and Scranton and every Scranton and Claymont in the United States of America. I've known her for over 30 years. I knew her before she was First Lady, when she became First Lady, when we served together in the Senate. During her years as Secretary of State, once a week we'd have breakfast at my home. I became the Obama whisperer. She'd look at me and say, "What did he mean by that?" He loves her. Everybody knows this has never been an issue with Hillary, unlike it's a gigantic issue with her opponent. But all kidding aside, everybody, by the way, my family's right there. The Finnegan. Oh, I didn't even see you. Don't you? Secret Service, you see that beautiful young girl there? Make sure she gets back when I leave the stage, okay? Because we're not leaving until I get a hug. Anyway, sorry, guys. It's kind of a family thing. But look, think about it. Everybody has known from day one how smart, how bright Hillary is. Everybody knows how tough she is. But what I don't think everybody knows enough about, it may be the difference between the Irish Catholic and the Methodist piece here. We wear everything on our sleeve. I don't think they fully understand how passionate she is about what she does. I want you to listen just for a minute. I don't even want you to clap. I want you because I want to make sure you understand what I know about her. You know, she understands that college loan to get a bright young girl or boy to school is about a lot more than whether or not they're going to get a chance. It's about the pride and the dignity of the parent who looks at that child. I mean this sincerely. Please don't just listen to this. I remember I went down to my dad's place of work to pick up a car, and he was wandering back and forth in the parking lot. The secretary said, "He's out there." And I walked out, and he said, "Joey, I'm so sorry. I'm so damn sorry." This was before cell phones. I thought maybe something happened. He said, "I went to the bank today, honey. They won't lend me the money to get you to school. I'm so ashamed." Hillary understands that the most damaging thing to a parent is to look at a talented child or a sick child or a child in need and not be able to do anything. She's understood that for years. She's understood for years that millions of people here in Scranton and Claymont and all across America went to bed staring at the ceiling thinking, my God, what happens if she develops breast cancer or he gets lung cancer? What happens? We lose everything. What do we do then? A lot of you remember those days. My family remembers those days. She gets it. She understands what it will mean. And I really mean this. It's more than about her. She understands what it means for these beautiful young girls, and I'm being serious now. These 3 beautiful little girls I'm looking at now. What it will mean to them when it's President Hillary Rodham Clinton. It will change their lives. It will change their lives. It will prove that my daughter and my granddaughters can do anything my sons and grandsons can do. That's what it will mean. It's consequential. So let me say this as clearly as I can. If you live in a neighborhood like I grew up in, where my wife Jill grew up in Willow Grove or down in Claymont, if you worry about your job, getting decent pay, if you worry about your children's education, if you're taking care of an elderly parent after losing the other one, then there's only one person in this election who will possibly help you, and that is Hillary Clinton. Folks, she's always been there. It's not a joke. You know, you use phrases like that, but she has always been there. That's her life story. And let's state the obvious. That is not Donald Trump's life story. Senator Ted Kaufman, who you know very well, Hillary, served with you, who used to be my administrative assistant for years and years, graduate of the Wharton School, an engineer by degree at Duke. He said he had a professor at the Wharton School. The Wharton School, by the way, doesn't have a Trump sign up. Anyway, that said, the difference between a success and a genuine success, a minimum success and a real success, is someone who had nothing and makes $1 million is a real success. Someone who inherits $1 million and makes $20 million, no, they're not a bum, but they're a mere success. Now, some are bums, but not all. Look, let me tell you the part that bothers me, and you know, as Hillary will point out and knows that no one ever doubts I mean what I say. The problem is I sometimes say all that I mean. But let me tell you what really bothers me most, and maybe this only works in where I grew up, I don't know. But you know, what bothers me most about Donald Trump is his cynicism is unbounded. I really mean this. Think of this for a minute, because you're all raised in this area. You're different ethnicities, different religions, different backgrounds. But there's one thing I've noticed all the years I've spent, and I've always come home. And that is that the way you were raised, if you ever showed a lack of empathy for someone in trouble, if you ever summed up, thought that the phrase he's most proud of, you're fired. Think about the phrase, you're fired. No, all kidding aside, I really mean this. Maybe it's just me. But think about what your mother or father or grandmother or grandfather would have said to you. Think about everything you learned as a child. I really mean this. No matter where you were raised, how can there be pleasure in division and you're fired? And he's trying to tell us he cares about the middle class. Give me a break, and to repeat myself, it's such a bunch of malarkey. It makes no sense. None. This guy doesn't care about the middle class. And I don't even blame him in a sense because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't have a clue. No, he really doesn't. He doesn't have a clue. And by the way, there's something else he has no clue about. That has nothing to do with being a Democrat or Republican. I have worked with 8 presidents of the United States. I have served with hundreds of senators, only 13 senators in history, I'm embarrassed to say, have served as long as I have. Dozens of secretaries of state and secretaries of defense of both parties. And I can say without hesitation, my word as a Biden, no major party nominee in the history of the United States of America has, no, don't cheer or quiet, just listen, has known less or been less prepared to deal with our national security than Donald Trump. And what absolutely amazes me, that he doesn't seem to want to learn it. No, I really mean it. He doesn't seem to want to learn it. He doesn't seem to think it matters. This man is totally, thoroughly unqualified to be President of the United States of America. He not only lacks the temperament, people say he lacks the temperament. I'd feel better if that's all he lacked. On every issue that matters most to our security, Donald Trump has no clue what it takes to lead this great country. Now look, you know, if I had said this 8, 10 months ago, you'd say, well, you know, I'm being partisan. Well, I am partisan. I make no apologies for that, but I'm not mean about it. And as Hillary will tell you, I don't know any Democrat that has more positive relationship with Republicans than I do in the United States Senate. But having said that, look at the people who've come out. Scores and scores of the most prominent Republican thinkers in the national security field. They've come out in both political parties important. He has no idea what he's talking about. Even confronted with the facts, he doesn't want to learn them. Few times he tries to deal with the facts, he reveals a profound misunderstanding what's at stake. Just listen for a second. Listen to him. He belittles our closest allies in this hemisphere and in Europe. Nations that stand with us are part of our security network, that are with us when we address every international challenge. Those who fought and bled alongside us for decades. He wants to toss those relationships aside, like the ones that like his failed business ventures or something. In the meantime, he talks cavalierly about encouraging other nations, as Hillary pointed out, to develop nuclear weapons, as if a nuclear war is some trivial affair. Does he not understand we wrote Japan's constitution to say they could not be a nuclear power? Where was he when in school? Someone who lacks this judgment cannot be trusted. There's a guy that follows me, right back here, has the nuclear codes. So God forbid everything happened to the president and I had to make a decision. The codes are with me all. He is not qualified to know the code. He can't be trusted. I was proud. My son, Bo, served for a year in Iraq, came back a highly decorated soldier. I must tell you, I must tell you, had Donald Trump been president, I would have thrown my body in front of him. No, I really mean it. To keep him from going if the judgment was based on Trump's decision. Every president since Harry Truman has looked toward a Europe whole, free, and at peace. One of the most consequential people right now who's trying to undo that is a man that Donald Trump says he admires. Now, I'm not big on the character assassination stuff. I really mean that. You look at everything, any campaign I've ever run. I'm just trying to, like that old program of all the Brennan, just the facts, ma'am, nothing but the facts. Oh, that was Joe Friday, actually. But he says he admires Vladimir Putin. No. It's more than the ooh about it. Here's the deal. What is Putin's objective, as Hillary knows as well as anyone dealing with Putin, as I have and the President has, and John Kerry? Putin's determined to crack NATO and crack the European alliance. That is his overarching, overwhelming interest. I'm heading from here, getting on a plane and flying to Kosovo, then to Serbia, then I'm going to the Baltic states. You know, one of the reasons I'm going is to make sure to reassure those who are members of NATO in the Baltic states we mean what we say. We mean what we say, this sacred alliance of 60 years. Because they're worried. Listen to his comments about Ukraine. He assures us Russia will not move on Ukraine. Without understanding they've already moved on Ukraine and occupy Crimea. This guy's shame has no limits. He's even gone so far as to ask Putin and Russia to conduct cyber attacks against the United States of America. No. Even if he is joking, which he's not. Even if he's joking. What an outrageous thing to say. Look, folks, these are not isolated examples. He's even showered praise on Saddam Hussein, one of the vilest dictators of the 20th century, a man who repeatedly backed terror attacks against Israel because he was supposedly, the reason he admires him, he was a killer of terrorists. That's why he likes Saddam. He would have loved Stalin. He would have loved Stalin. Look, this says a lot about his approach. It explains why he so often embraced tactics of terrorist enemies themselves. Religious intolerance, casting entire communities as culpable for the acts of a few in the community. Torture when he knows it's illegal and says he would still order it even though the military commanders said they would not obey his orders. When can you think of ever in history where military commanders have said before a man or woman is elected that they would not follow his orders? Threatening to kill innocent family members of suspects. Indiscriminate bombing, what he calls for. That's how anyone hoping to lead this great democracy in the world should behave? Look, he likes autocrats. He wills the politics of fear and intolerance, calling for a ban on Muslims in the United States, slandering proud Muslim parents of a Gold Star family who paid the ultimate sacrifice, threatening to send American citizens to Guantanamo. Oh, I tell you, this guy's okay. Look, Trump's ideas are not only profoundly wrong, they're very dangerous and they're very un-American. They reveal a profound ignorance of our Constitution. It's a recipe for playing into the hands, and I will end this because you've been standing so long. It's a recipe for playing into the hands of terrorists and their propaganda. Last year, ISIL's top leader, who we've been tracking since we got bin Laden, Hillary, me, John, everyone else, the president, his name is al-Baghdadi, and he revealed the goal of ISIL. He just said it straight out. You go on the website. He said their goal is to, quote, compel the Crusaders to actively destroy the gray zones themselves, meaning anywhere where Christians and Muslims live, he calls a gray zone. He said the objective is to actively destroy that gray zone. Muslims in the West, he says, will have to quickly find themselves between two choices, either apostatize or emigrate to the Islamic State and thereby escape prosecution. How does he make the case? By pointing out that no Muslim is welcome in the West. ISIL wants to manufacture a clash of civilizations between us versus them. Trump is trying to give them exactly what they want. Last week, he stood in front of a crowd in Florida and said President Obama founded a terrorist organization, ISIL. Now look, this I really should end with. You know, that's an outrageous statement. But let me tell you why it's a dangerous statement. Why, as he might say, the bad guys are listening. Yesterday, the head of Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, Iran's top terrorist surrogate, and a direct threat to our ally Israel, repeated Trump's claim in the entire Muslim world and around the world that President Obama founded ISIL. You say, well, what difference does that make? Here's exactly what the leader of Hezbollah said, referring to Trump's accusation. He said this is the spokesman for ISIL. For Hezbollah. This is not a simple speech, referring to Trump. This, I'm quoting him, this is an American presidential candidate. This was spoken on behalf of the American Republican Party. And he, meaning Trump, has the data and documents to back it up. If my son were still in Iraq, and I say to all those who are there, the threat to their life has gone up a couple clicks. It's gone up a couple clicks. You saw what's happening in Turkey, where some in Turkey are accusing us of being part of the coup attempt. Ladies and gentlemen, does he have any idea the adverse consequences these outlandish comments have on our allies, our friends, and the physical safety of our troops? Trump is already making our country less safe, and I'm testing your stamina. So let me go to the end here and say, Hillary has forgotten more about American foreign policy than Trump and his entire, not exaggerating, his entire team will ever understand. Ladies and gentlemen, Hillary's been there. She has been tested. I've been in the room with her as we jointly have, with the president's leadership, sent some of these killers to the gates of hell. At our weekly breakfast on the international stage, she's strong, she's respected, she's admired. There's nothing that she doesn't understand about America's place in the world. And ladies and gentlemen, because she knows one thing that Donald Trump doesn't know, it's never, ever been a good bet to bet against the United States of America. Give it a fair shot. Give it a fair chance. Americans have never, ever let their country down. Never. And ladies and gentlemen, in Scranton and in America, we never bow, we never bend, we never kneel, we never yield. We own the finish line. That's who we are. We are America. And she gets it. We're second to none. And Hillary Clinton is going to write the next chapter in American victory.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former mayor of the city of New York, Rudy Giuliani.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's truly an honor for me to be with you, particularly on the occasion of the talk that Donald Trump is going to give today about the danger that we face from radical Islamic terrorism. Notice I used the words radical Islamic terrorism. Donald Trump is our only hope for change in the way in which we approach Islamic extremist terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism. He's our only hope for change. He's going to describe to you the America that President Obama and the person he unfortunately, and I believe now probably believes mistakenly, selected as his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. He's going to describe the world they were handed. And then he's going to describe the world as it is now. In other words, the damage they have done, particularly in the Middle East, but all throughout the world. In almost every area that we can think of, things are worse today than they were on the day Hillary Clinton walked into the State Department. I think history will write that she was the worst Secretary of State, at least in our lifetime. And what have they left us? They've left us a government that used to be on offense against Islamic extremist terrorism, radical terrorism, to a government that's now purely on defense, waiting for the next attack. Isn't that what we're doing? We're waiting for the next attack. God forbid here in America, God forbid in Paris or London, or I have a friend who left for London yesterday, and he was afraid to go to London. Afraid to go to London. You know why he was afraid to go to London? Because we don't know where they're going to strike next. That's why 70% of the American people today are afraid. This is the world that Hillary Clinton created for us on all those thousands of miles of trips, which amounted to a much worse world than the one she was given. Maybe it would have been better if she had stayed home. She and the president are afraid to even name our enemy, much less confront them and defeat them. Donald Trump has the intellect, the stamina, and the strength to confront our enemies. No one doubts that. And he has the temperament to win. She's running on her experience. If I were her, I'd run away from my experience. I don't have time to talk about it all, and I won't, but she's been found extremely careless by the FBI in handling our top secret material. I used to be the United States Attorney and the Associate Attorney General of the United States. I hired many lawyers, DEA agents, FBI agents, on and on and on. Read many background reports. If I were to read a background report on someone who had been extremely careless with top secret material, I couldn't hire them. In other words, she couldn't be hired as an assistant U.S. attorney, an FBI agent, a CIA agent. She couldn't be hired for any job in the government, nor could she be hired by a contractor who was doing work with the government, because she has a very, very bad security record. She was extremely careless in handling our top secret material, and she wants to be president. She's made millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And her husband, you know what his name is, by turning the State Department into a pay to the Clinton Foundation to play with the department racketeering enterprise. Do you know what a racketeering enterprise is? It's a racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. That is what the Clinton Foundation is. It's a racketeer, influence, corrupt organization put together for the enrichment of the Clintons and selling America out to Russian oligarchs, to money launderers, and to crooks all over the world. Read the book, Clinton Cash. I don't have time to tell you about all of it, and then just make a chart, and you're going to cover about 10 pages worth of what I would consider straight-out crimes. She has destroyed more emails than I have ever written. But of course, I don't do yoga. We can now see why she destroyed those emails. Because the emails show the connection between that racketeering enterprise I just described to you. It shows the connection between the people who were paying millions to the Clinton Foundation and to Bill Clinton in speaking fees. A $1.2 million speaking fee by UBS, $1.2 million to give one speech? I mean, he's a good speaker, but $1.2 million? Just at the time that Hillary is calling up the Treasury Department and telling them to go easy on UBS? Gosh almighty, as an ex-prosecutor, I'd love to get my hands on that case. Man, could I nail her on that one. Well, enough about her, because we're not going to have to think about her after November goes past. Donald Trump is very fortunate to have Mike Pence as his partner. Mike's background is exactly a complement to Donald Trump, meaning he's exactly what Donald Trump needs, and Donald Trump is exactly what he needs, and they are both exactly what America needs. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committee. He's a member of the, and during the time of September 11, when we went through the worst foreign attack in our history since the War of 1812. Remember, we didn't start this war, they did. We don't want this war, they do. And they didn't start it even in 2001. They attacked the World Trade Center in 1993. And they attacked it under the ideology of radical Islamic extremism, to create a caliphate, to destroy the infidels, Christians, Jews, non-believing Muslims from their point of view, and other people. Mike Pence understands this from his time both on the Foreign Affairs Committee, from his very, very timely visit, which I remember, to Ground Zero when we were in desperate need of help. He was there. And from his work on Judiciary Committee and helping to fashion the Patriot Act. By the way, under those 8 years, before Obama came along, we didn't have any successful radical Islamic terrorist attack in the United States. They all started when Clinton and Obama got into office. He's also been in business, and you know better than I do what a great governor he is of your state, what he's done for your state, how he's improved it and helped it and left it in tremendous condition. So I am what he did for the state of Indiana. Excuse me. We're going there next. We're going there next. Youngstown, Ohio. I love Youngstown, Ohio. So Donald Trump is very fortunate to have Mike Pence, and I am very honored to introduce him because I've been a great admirer from the time he was in the United States Congress through the time that he really has taken Indiana to heights that, gosh, if we could take the federal government there, we'd all be in great shape. So all of you in Ohio, which is a state that I also love very much, you got to support Mike, you got to support Donald, but here's the most important thing. They're our only hope for change. You've got to support them because they're the ones who are fighting for the regular American. They're the ones who are fighting against the establishment in Washington. They're the ones who are fighting against the lobbyists and the people who control Washington. And the press that is complicit in it, they're not fighting the press because the press is necessarily criticizing them. They're fighting the press for you so that you can get the truth, so you can get a fair, so you can get a fair, so you can get a fair presentation of the facts. When they fight the press, it's not because they're thin-skinned or can't take it. They're both big, tough guys who've been through a lot. They can take a lot. Nothing's going to hurt them. They've been through it all. They're fighting the battle for you so that you and your children and my children can have a fair press, a press that gives both sides equal treatment on the news pages. So it is my honor to introduce to Youngstown, Ohio, the governor of Indiana and the next vice president of the United States, Mike Pence.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to ladies and gentlemen here in Youngstown, Ohio. It is an honor to be with you today. It seemed like it was just a few short weeks ago with my wife Karen at my side. I had the privilege to accept my party's nomination to run and serve as the next Vice President of the United States of America. And I'm deeply humbled to be with you today. I'm grateful for that gracious introduction by Mayor Giuliani, someone that I deeply, deeply admire, a man who demonstrated his courage on a dark day in America and has been a clarion voice for the interests of the United States of America and our security ever since. Today here in Youngstown, it is my privilege to introduce to you a man I've come to know personally over just the last several months, come to know his family, come to see him when the Klieg lights are off and the cameras are off. And I can tell you with conviction, he is a man whose strength and whose leadership and whose vision will make America great again. Today will be one more example as he articulates an extraordinary vision about national security. While many in the national media continue to major in the minors, focusing on semantics over substance, today you will hear once again a man who will remain focused on the solutions to the real challenges facing the people of the United States of America. Last week, Donald Trump outlined his plan to restart our nation's economy, to make America work again. Today, he will speak of the clear and present danger that radical Islamic terrorism poses to our nation and how we can make America safe again. You know, in my years in public service, I've seen the handiwork of our enemies firsthand. I was in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill on September 11th, 2001. I walked along with Mayor Giuliani in the ashes and rubble of Ground Zero just about a week later in New York City. And with my family at my side, I have stood in a quiet field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the heroes and the victims of Flight 93 met their fate. Since then, I've seen the sacrifices of the American soldier in the global war on terror. And then I watched, over the last 7.5 years, as the hard-fought gains that they won were squandered by the failed foreign policy of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. History teaches that weakness arouses evil, and the weak leadership of President Obama and his Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, leading from behind, moving red lines, making so-called deals and ransom payments to the radical mullahs in Iran. The rise, rule, and reign of ISIS are a testament to this truth of history. Donald Trump knows that America needs to be strong for the American people and the world to be safe. Today you will hear the latest installment of a new vision for a new time. In place of the rudderless and aimless foreign policy of the recent past, you will hear today a broad-shouldered vision to confront our enemies, restore our security, and once again have America command the respect of the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for new American leadership, for a safer America at home, for a stronger America on the world stage. It is my high honor and distinct privilege to give you a man of courage, a leader who will name our enemy and marshal the resources and the national will to make America safe again. I give you the next President of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. It's great to be with you this afternoon, and today we begin a conversation about how to make America safe again. In the 20th century, the United States has defeated fascism, Nazism, and communism. Now a different threat challenges our world: radical Islamic terrorism. This summer, there's been an ISIS attack launched outside the war zones of the Middle East, hard to believe, every 84 hours. Here in America, we have seen one brutal attack after another. 13 were murdered and 38 wounded in the assault on Fort Hood. The Boston Marathon bombing wounded and maimed 264 people and ultimately left 5 dead, including 2 of our great police officers. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, 5 unarmed Marines, unbelievable people, by the way, were shot and killed at a military recruiting center. Last December, 14 innocent Americans were gunned down at an office party in San Bernardino. Another 22 were very gravely injured. In June, 49 Americans were executed at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Another 53 were badly injured. It was the worst mass shooting in our history, and the attack, by far the worst, on the LGBTQ Q community. And I'll tell you what, we can never, ever allow this to happen again. In Europe, thank you. In Europe, we have seen the same carnage and bloodshed inflicted upon our closest allies. In January of 2015, a French satirical newspaper, Charlie Hebdo, was attacked for publishing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. 12 were killed, including 2 police officers, and 11 were wounded. 2 days later, 4 were murdered in a Jewish delicatessen. In November of 2015, terrorists went on a shooting rampage in Paris that slaughtered 130 people and wounded another 368 people, some in very, very, very bad shape today. France is suffering gravely, and the tourism industry is being massively affected in a most negative way. In March of this year, terrorists detonated a bomb in Brussels airport, killing 32 and injuring 340 people. This July, in the south of France, an Islamic terrorist turned his truck into an instrument of mass murder, plowing down and killing 85 men, women, and children, and wounding 308 people. Terrible. Among the dead were 2 Americans, a Texas father, and his 11-year-old son. A few weeks ago in Germany, a refugee armed with an axe wounded 5 people in a gruesome train attack. Only days ago, an ISIS killer invaded a Christian church in Normandy, France, forced an 85-year-old priest to his knees, a priest who was beloved, before cutting his throat and just unthinkable other things. Overseas, ISIS has carried out an absolute atrocity, and one after another. Children slaughtered, girls sold into slavery, men and women burned alive, crucifixions, beheadings, and drownings, ethnic minorities targeted for mass execution, holy sites desecrated, Christians driven from their homes and hunted for extermination. ISIS rounding up what it calls Nation of the Cross, in a campaign of absolute and total genocide. We cannot let this evil continue. Thank you. Thank you. Nor can we let the hateful ideology of radical Islam, its oppression of women, gays, children, and non-believers be allowed to reside or spread within our own countries. We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, just as we have defeated every threat we've faced at every age and before. But we will not, remember this, defeat it with closed eyes or silenced voices. We have a president that doesn't want to say the words. Anyone who cannot name our enemy is not fit to lead our country. Anyone who cannot condemn the hatred, oppression, and violence of radical Islam lacks the moral clarity to serve as our president. The rise of ISIS is the direct result of policy decisions made by President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton. let's look back at the Middle East at the very beginning of 2009, before the Obama-Clinton administration took over. Libya was stable. Syria was under control. Egypt was ruled by a secular president and an ally of the United States. Iraq was experiencing a reduction in violence. The group that would become what we now call ISIS was close to being extinguished. Iran was being choked off by economic sanctions. Fast forward to today. What we have, and think of this, and the decisions made by the Obama-Clinton group have been absolutely disastrous. Libya is in ruins. Our ambassador and 3 other really brave Americans are dead, and ISIS has gained a new base of operations. Syria is in the midst of a disastrous civil war. ISIS controls large portions of territory. A refugee crisis now threatens Europe and the United States. In Egypt, terrorists have gained a foothold in the Sinai Desert near the Suez Canal, one of the most essential waterways of the world. Iraq is in chaos, and ISIS is on the loose. ISIS has spread across the Middle East and into the West. In 2014, ISIS was operating in 7 nations. They were in 7 nations. Terrible, but that's what it was. Today, they're fully operational in 18 countries with aspiring branches in 6 more, for a total of 24, and many believe that number is actually 28 to 30 countries. They don't even know. The situation is likely worse than the public has any idea. A new congressional report reveals that the administration has downplayed the growth of ISIS, with 40% of analysts saying they had experienced efforts to manipulate their findings. They're trying to make it look much better than it is. It's bad. At the same time, ISIS is trying to infiltrate refugee flows into Europe and to the United States. Iran, the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, is now flush with $150 billion in cash released by the United States. Plus, if you remember from 2 weeks ago, another $400 million in actual cash that was obviously used for ransom. Worst of all, the nuclear deal puts Iran, the #1 state sponsor of radical Islamic terrorism, on a path to nuclear weapons. In short, the Obama-Clinton foreign policy has unleashed ISIS, destabilized the Middle East, and put the nation of Iran, which chants death to America, in a dominant position of regional power and, in fact, aspiring to be a dominant world power. It all began in 2009 with what has become known as President Obama's Global Apology Tour. We all remember. In a series of speeches, President Obama described America as arrogant, dismissive, derisive, and a colonial power. He was describing us. He informed other countries that he would be speaking up about America's past errors. He pledged that we would no longer be a senior partner that sought to dictate our terms. He lectured CIA officers of the need to acknowledge their mistakes and described Guantanamo Bay as a rallying cry for our enemies. Perhaps no speech was more misguided than President Obama's speech to the Muslim world delivered in Cairo, Egypt, 2009. I remember it well. In winning the Cold War, President Ronald Reagan repeatedly touted the superiority of freedom over communism and called the USSR the evil empire. Yet when President Obama delivered his address in Cairo, no such moral courage could be found or would be found. Instead of condemning the oppression of women and gays in many Muslim nations, and the systematic violations of human rights or the financing of global terrorism, President Obama tried to draw an equivalency between our human rights record, and remember this, our human rights and theirs. The records are unbelievable and unmistakable. His naive words were followed by even more naive actions. The failure to establish a new status of forces agreement in Iraq and the election-driven timetable for withdrawal surrendered our gains in that country and led directly to the rise of ISIS, without question. The failures in Iraq were compounded by Hillary Clinton's disaster, total disaster, in Libya. President Obama has since said that he regrets, and really regrets, Libya and the mistake he made. He considers it his worst mistake. According to then Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, the invasion of Libya was nearly a split decision, but Hillary Clinton's forceful advocacy for the intervention was the deciding factor. That's why we went in. With one episode of bad judgment after another, Hillary Clinton's policies launched ISIS onto the world stage. Yet, as she threw the Middle East into violent turmoil, things turned out really to be not so hot for our world and our country, the Middle East in particular. The Clintons made almost $60 million in gross income while she was Secretary of State. It is unbelievable. Incident after incident proves again and again Hillary Clinton lacks the judgment, as said by Bernie Sanders, stability and temperament, and the moral character to lead our nation. Importantly, she also lacks the mental and physical stamina to take on ISIS and all of the many adversaries we face, not only in terrorism, but in trade and every other challenge we must confront to turn our great country around. It is now time for a new approach. Our current strategy of nation building and regime change is a proven absolute failure. We have created the vacuums that allow terrorism to grow and thrive. I was an opponent of the Iraq War from the beginning. A major difference between me and my opponent. Though I was a private citizen whose personal opinions on such matters were really not sought, I nonetheless publicly expressed my private doubts about the invasion. I was against it, believe me. 3 months before the invasion, I said in an interview with Neil Cavuto, to whom I offer my best wishes for a speedy recovery, that, quote, perhaps we shouldn't be doing it yet, and that the economy is a much bigger problem. In August of 2004, very early, right after the conflict, I made a detailed statement to Esquire magazine in an interview. Here is the quote in full. Look at the war in Iraq and the mess we're in. I would never have handled it that way. This was right after the invasion. Does anybody really believe that Iraq is going to be a wonderful democracy where people are going to run down to the voting box and gently put in their ballot, and the winner is happily going to go and step up and lead the country? Come on. I then continued, 2 minutes after we leave, there's going to be a revolution. And the meanest, toughest, smartest, most vicious guy, in this case, guy, will take over. And he'll have weapons of mass destruction, which Saddam Hussein did not have. What was the purpose of this whole thing? Hundreds and hundreds of young people killed. And what about the people coming back with no arms and no legs? Not to mention, in all fairness, the other side, the tremendous damage done. All those Iraqi kids who've been blown to pieces. And it turns out that all of the reasons for the war were blatantly wrong. All of this death and destruction for nothing. So I've been clear for a long time that we should not have gone in. But I have been just as clear in saying what a catastrophic mistake Hillary Clinton and President Obama made with the reckless way in which they pulled out. After we had made those hard-fought sacrifices and gains, we should have never made such a sudden withdrawal on a timetable advertised to our enemies. They said, we're moving out. Here's our time, here's our date. Who would do this but an incompetent president? Al-Qaeda in Iraq had been decimated, and Obama and Clinton gave it new life and allowed it to spread all across the world. By that same token, President Obama and Hillary Clinton should have never attempted to build a democracy in Libya, to push for immediate regime change in Syria, or to support the overthrow of Mubarak in Egypt. One more point on this. I have long said that we should have kept the oil in Iraq. I said it over and over and over again. Another area where my judgment has been proven correct. I just said it so many times, virtually every time I was interviewed. Keep the oil, keep the oil. According to CNN, ISIS made as much as $500 million in oil sales in 2014 alone. That's before they really got started, fueling and funding its reign of terror. If we had controlled the oil, like I said we should, we could have prevented the rise of ISIS in Iraq, both by cutting off a major source of funding and through the presence of U.S. forces necessary to safeguard the oil and vital infrastructure products necessary for us to have the oil. I was saying this constantly and consistently to whoever would listen. I said, keep the oil, keep the oil, keep the oil. Don't let somebody else get it. If they had listened to me then, we would have had the economic benefits of the oil, which I wanted to use to help take care of the wounded soldiers and families of those who died in the war. In addition to which, thousands of lives would have been saved. This proposal, by its very nature, would have left soldiers in place of our assets. We would have had soldiers there guarding this valuable supply of oil. In the old days, when we won a war, to the victor belonged the spoils. Instead, all we got from Iraq and our adventures in the Middle East was death, destruction, and tremendous financial loss. But it's time to put the mistakes of the past behind us and chart a new course. If I become president, the era of nation building will be brought to a very swift and decisive end. Thank you. Our new approach, which must be shared by both parties in America, by our allies overseas, and by our friends in the Middle East, must be to halt the spread of radical Islam. All actions should be oriented around this goal, and any country which shares this goal will be our ally. Very important. Some don't share this goal. We cannot always choose our friends, but we can never fail to recognize our enemies. As president, I will call for an international conference focused on this goal. We will work side by side with our friends in the Middle East, including our greatest ally, Israel. We will partner with King Abdullah of Jordan and the President of Egypt, President Sisi, and all others who recognize this ideology of death that must be extinguished. We will also work very closely with NATO on this new mission. I had previously said that NATO was obsolete because it failed to deal adequately with terrorism. Since my comments, they have changed their policy and now have a new division focused on terror threats. Very good. Very, very good. I also believe that we could find common ground with Russia in the fight against ISIS. Wouldn't that be a good thing? Wouldn't that be a good thing? They too have much at stake in the outcome in Syria and have had their own battles with Islamic terrorism just as bad as ours. They have a big, big problem in Russia with ISIS. My administration will aggressively pursue joint and coalition military operations to crush and destroy ISIS, international cooperation to cut off their funding, expanded intelligence sharing, and cyber warfare to disrupt and disable their propaganda and recruiting. Their recruiting is taking place right now, and they're setting records. It's got to be stopped. We cannot allow the internet to be used as a recruiting tool and for other purposes by our enemy. We must shut down their access to this form of communication, and we must do it immediately. Immediately. Unlike Hillary Clinton, who has risked so many lives with her careless handling of sensitive information, my administration will not telegraph exactly military plans and what they are. And by the way, what's happened with her 33,000 emails is an absolute disgrace to the United States of America. Thank you. I've often said that the great General Douglas MacArthur and the great General George Patton would be in a state of shock if they were alive today to see the way President Obama and Hillary Clinton try to recklessly announce their every move before it happens, like they did in Iraq. so that the enemy can prepare and adapt. Their enemy says thank you. The fight will not be limited to ISIS. We will decimate al-Qaeda, and we will seek to starve funding for Iran-backed Hamas and Hezbollah. So important. We can use existing UN Security Council resolutions to apply new and even stronger sanctions. Military, cyber, and financial warfare will all be necessary to dismantle Islamic terrorism. But we must use ideological warfare as well. Very important. And they use it on us better than we have ever even thought of using it on them. But that will change. Just as we won, thank you, just as we won the Cold War in part by exposing the evils of communism and the virtues of free markets, so too must we take on the ideology of radical Islam. While my opponent accepted millions of dollars in foundation donations from countries where being gay is an offense, punishable by prison or death, my administration will speak out against the oppression of women, gays, and people of different beliefs. Our administration will be a friend to all moderate Muslim reformers in the Middle East and will amplify their voices. This includes speaking out against the horrible practice of honor killings, where women are murdered by their relatives for dressing, marrying, or acting in a way that violates fundamentalist teachings. Over 1,000 Pakistani girls are estimated to be the victims of honor killings by their relatives each year. Recently, a prominent Pakistani social media star was strangled to death by her brother on the charge of dishonoring the family. In his confession, the brother took pride in the murder and said, "Girls are born to stay home and follow traditions." Shockingly, this is a practice that has reached our own shores. On such cases, and many, many cases have happened, but one involves an Iraqi immigrant who was sentenced to 34 years in jail for running over his own daughter, claiming she had been too westernized. To defeat Islamic terrorism, we must also speak out forcefully against a hateful ideology that provides the breeding ground for violence and terrorism to grow. It's a breeding ground. It's a terrible, terrible breeding ground. A new immigration policy is needed immediately and as well. The common thread linking the major Islamic terrorist attacks that have recently occurred on our soil, 9/11, the Fort Hood shooting, the Boston bombing, the San Bernardino attack, the Orlando attack, is that they have involved immigrants or the children of immigrants. Clearly, new screening procedures are needed. A review by the U.S. Senate Immigration Subcommittee has identified 380 foreign-born individuals charged with terrorism or terrorism-related offenses between 9/11 and 2014, and many more since then, and this year is a record for identification. It's gotten worse, far worse. We also know that ISIS recruits refugees after their entrance into the country, as we have seen with the Somali refugee population in Minnesota. Beyond terrorism, as we have also seen in France, foreign populations have brought their anti-Semitic attitudes with them. In Cologne, Germany, on New Year's Eve, we have seen the reports of sexual violence and assault, far greater than anybody knows. Pew polling shows that in many of the countries from which we draw large numbers of immigrants, extreme views about religion, such as the death penalty, and for those who are involved, the death penalty is very, very common if you don't have the faith that they demand you have. A Trump administration will establish a clear principle that will govern all decisions pertaining to immigration. And we will be tough, and we will be even extreme. We should only admit into this country those who share our values and respect our people. In the Cold War, we had an ideological screening test. The time is overdue to develop a new screening test for the threats we face today. I call it extreme vetting. I call it extreme vetting. Our country has enough problems. We don't need more. And these are problems like we've never had before. In addition to screening out all members of the sympathizers of terrorist groups, we must also screen out any who have hostile attitudes toward our country or its principles, or who believe that Sharia law should supplant American law. Those who do not believe in our Constitution or who support bigotry and hatred will not be admitted for immigration into our country. Only those who we expect to flourish in our country and to embrace a tolerant American society should be issued visas. To put these new procedures in place, we will have to temporarily suspend immigration from some of the most dangerous and volatile regions of the world that have a history of exporting terrorism. Not for us. Not for us. Thank you. As soon as I take office, I will ask the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security to identify a list of regions where adequate screening cannot take place. There are many such regions. We will stop processing visas from those areas until such time as it is deemed safe to resume based on new circumstances or new procedures. The size of current immigration flows are simply too large to perform adequate screening. We admit about 100,000 permanent immigrants from the Middle East every year. Beyond that, we admit hundreds of thousands of temporary workers and visitors from the same regions, hundreds of thousands. If we don't control the numbers, we can't perform adequate screening. There's no way it can take place. By contrast, my opponent wants to increase, which is unbelievable, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, wants to increase the flow of Syrian refugees by 550% over what they are now. The United States Senate Subcommittee on Immigration estimates that Hillary Clinton's plan would mean roughly 620,000 refugees from all current refugee-sending nations in her first term, assuming no cuts to other refugee programs. So it could get worse. This would be additional to all other non-refugee immigration. Unbelievable numbers. Unbelievable numbers. The subcommittee estimates her plan would impose a lifetime cost of roughly $400 billion when you include the cost of health care, welfare, housing, schooling, and all other entitlement benefits that are excluded from the State Department's placement figures. Think of this, $400 billion. In short, Hillary Clinton wants to be America's Angela Merkel. True. And you know what a disaster this massive immigration has been to Germany and the people of Germany. Crime has risen to levels that no one thought they would ever see. It is a catastrophe. We have enough problems in our country. We don't need more. Lastly, we will need to restore common sense to our security procedures. Another common feature of the past attacks that have occurred on our soil is that warning signs were totally ignored. The 9/11 hijackers had fraud all over their visa applications. Almost every one of them, it said practically in big bold letters, fraud. And nobody saw it. The Russians warned us about the Boston bombers here on political asylum, and the attackers were even twice interviewed by the FBI. Very sad. The female San Bernardino shooter, on her statements and everything that she said, she was here on a fiancé visa, which most people have never even heard of, from Saudi Arabia, and she wanted to support very openly jihad online. These are the people we're taking in. A neighbor saw suspicious behavior, bombs on the floor, and other things, but didn't warn authorities because they said they didn't want to be accused of racial profiling. Now, many are dead, and many more are gravely wounded. The shooter in Orlando reportedly celebrated in his classroom after 9/11. He, too, was interviewed by the FBI. His father, a native of Afghanistan, supported the oppressive Taliban regime and expressed anti-American views very strongly. And by the way, was just seen sitting behind Hillary Clinton with a big, fat smile on his face all the way through her speech. He obviously liked what she had to say. It's called weakness. It's called stupidity. And we've had it. The Fort Hood shooter delivered a presentation to a room full of mental health experts before the attacks, in which he threw out one red flag after another. He even proclaimed that we love death more than you love life. Not good. These warning signs were ignored because political correctness has replaced common sense in our society. Thank you. That is why one of my first acts as president will be to establish a commission on radical Islam, which will include reformist voices in the Muslim community who will hopefully work with us. We want to build bridges and erase divisions. The goal of the commission will be to identify and explain to the American public the core convictions and beliefs of radical Islam, to identify the warning signs of radicalization, and to expose the networks in our society that support radicalization. This commission will be used to develop new protocols for local police officers, federal investigators, and immigration screeners. And while I'm at it, we should give a hand to our great police officers and law enforcement officials. Thank you. We will also keep open Guantanamo Bay and place a renewed emphasis on human intelligence. Drone strikes will remain part of our strategy, but we will also seek to capture high-value targets to gain needed information to dismantle their organizations. Foreign combatants will be tried in military commissions. Finally, we will pursue aggressive criminal or immigration charges against anyone who lends material support to terrorism. There will be consequences for those people. There will be very serious consequences. Similar to the effort to take down the mafia, this will be the understood mission of every federal investigator and prosecutor in the country. To accomplish your goal, you must state a mission. The support networks for radical Islam in this country will be stripped out and removed one by one, viciously if necessary. Viciously if necessary. Immigration officers will also have their powers restored. Those been taken away. Those who are guests in our country that are preaching hate will be asked to return home immediately, and if they don't do it, we will return them home. To make America safe again, we must work together again. Our victory in the Cold War relied on a bipartisan and international consensus. That is what we must have to defeat radical Islamic terrorism. But just like we couldn't defeat communism without acknowledging that communism exists or explaining its horrible evils, we can't defeat radical Islamic terrorism unless we do the exact same thing. We have to explain that it exists and explain the difficulties. We have to have a leader that can do that, and we don't have that now. But this also means that we have to promote the exceptional virtues of our own way of life. We have an exceptional country, an exceptional way of life, but it's being tread on by sick, sick people. And expecting that as newcomers come into our society, they will likewise have respect and do the same. Pride in our institutions, our history, and our values should be taught by parents and teachers and impressed upon all of those who come into our society and want to join our society. Assimilation is not an act of hostility, but an expression of compassion. Our system of government and our American culture is the best in the world and will produce the best outcomes for all who adopt it. Thank you. Thank you. This approach will not only make us safer, but bring us closer together as a country. Renewing this spirit of Americanism will help heal the divisions in our country, of which there are so many. We have a divider as president. We call him the Great Divider. It's the thing he does best. It will do so by emphasizing what we have in common, not what pulls us apart. This is my pledge to the American people. As your president, I will be your single greatest champion. I will fight to ensure that every American is treated equally, protected equally, and honored equally. We will reject bigotry and hatred and oppression in all of its many ugly forms, and seek a new future built on our common culture and values as one American people. Only this way will we make America great again and safe again for everyone. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.